It's just past 9 Tuesday morning, as presented by the TSN team, is coming up in a moment, but for now, subscribe to the channel and give us a like. The Russians struck a hospital in Kharkiv with guided aerial bombs. 4 people have been injured. At the time of the shelling, there were 57 patients in the hospital. All of them were evacuated and transferred to another medical facility. They are undergoing additional examinations. Last night, 3 guided aerial bombs were recorded hitting Kharkiv. Fires broke out at the impact sites, houses and outbuildings were damaged, and parked cars burned down. The city authorities have already counted 200 shattered windows. Currently, electricity is being restored in Kharkiv, as several districts lost power after the enemy strike. At night, the Russians attacked critical infrastructure facilities in the Kirovohrad region. Preliminary reports indicate no casualties. 5 settlements were left without electricity, some buildings were damaged, and the fires have already been extinguished, according to rescuers. Ukrzaliznytsia has announced changes to the schedule of suburban trains. 4 people were injured in the Kherson region. The Russians directed a drone at a store in Bilozerka. A shop assistant and an elderly woman suffered blast injuries. The occupiers also attacked residential neighborhoods in Kherson with artillery. 2 civilians were injured. Enemy shells destroyed private and apartment buildings in the Korabelny and Dnipro districts of the city. Shells keep flying non-stop into the Synelnykivsky district of Dnipropetrovsk region. Several of them hit the Pokrovska community. A cultural institution and a private house were damaged. The Russians attacked the Bilozerka district with a drone. A fire broke out there and infrastructure was damaged. The occupiers shelled Nikopol region with heavy artillery and drones. A gymnasium, private homes, and farm buildings were damaged. Trump confirmed that he will meet with Zelensky on Friday, October 17th. The U.S. president announced this to journalists aboard the plane. Earlier, several media outlets reported that the president of Ukraine is expected in Washington. The team that traveled from Ukraine to the U.S. to prepare for Zelensky's visit was led by Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko and National Security and Defense Council Secretary Rustem Umerov. Among the main topics of the meetings are strengthening Ukraine's air defense and increasing its strike capabilities, supporting the energy sector ahead of winter, as well as new sanctions against Russia. Over the past 2 days, there have been active contacts between the Ukrainian and American presidents. Zelensky and Trump had as many as 2 phone conversations, the main topic of which was U.S. military aid to Ukraine, including the possibility of transferring Tomahawk missiles. A clear signal from NATO. The North Atlantic Alliance is launching its annual nuclear deterrence exercise, Steadfast Noon. About 2,000 military personnel and 70 aircraft will take part in them. They will involve, in particular, fighter jets capable of carrying U.S. nuclear bombs stationed in Europe. The exercises will be held in the Netherlands, Belgium, the United Kingdom, and Denmark. The training will take place against the backdrop of increased Russian provocations against NATO countries. After the end of the conflict in Gaza, Donald Trump called on his special envoy to resolve the issue with Russia. The American president was delivering a speech in the Israeli parliament at that time. Notably, in his address, Trump admitted that Witkoff had gone to previous negotiations with Putin unprepared. He knew little about Russia, the Kremlin leader, or even about politics in general. But the U.S. president praised him for the fact that, instead of the planned 20 minutes, the special envoy spoke with Putin for as long as 5 hours. Trump also once again claimed that he resolved 8 wars in 8 months and declared the war in Gaza to be over. The U.S. president arrived in Israel the day before, where the latest hostages released by Hamas were being welcomed. 20 Israelis had been held captive for 2 years, ever since the militants attacked Israel. The European Union is working on allocating 100 million euros to help Ukraine get through this winter. This was announced during her visit to Kyiv by the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas. According to the official, the funds will be used for generators, shelters, and equipment for the cold season. For his part, Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andriy Sybiha, handed over a list of our winter needs following Russian attacks on the energy infrastructure. Kallas also reported that Brussels has decided to allocate about 10 million euros for a special tribunal for the aggressor country and 6 million for the victims of the Kremlin's war crimes. Journalists asked Kaja Kallas how the European Union views the transfer of American Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. The diplomat replied that Brussels welcomes all tools that make Ukraine stronger and Russia weaker. She also added that, in her opinion, time is no longer on the Kremlin's side.
Perhaps time was once on Russia's side, but now it is shifting to Ukraine's side. Russia has rejected any attempts at a quick peace, so we are preparing for a long road ahead. The European Union is strengthening Ukraine's combat capabilities with €2 billion for drones. As Russia's war continues, we must use any revenues to financially support Ukraine. European leaders are discussing a reparations loan from frozen Russian assets. Moscow should pay for this war, not European taxpayers.
I shared a specific list of needs to strengthen Ukraine's resilience ahead of the winter period, and we discussed in detail the ways and timelines for providing the necessary equipment. This is now a priority for Ukrainian diplomacy, and we are grateful to the European Union for its consistent and comprehensive support. We also clearly see the European Union's need for Ukrainian experience and our acquired combat experience in countering such threats. And the Ukrainian side is ready to share this experience.
The Ministry of Energy has refuted the information that heating will only be turned on starting November 1st. They emphasize that the heating season in Ukraine will begin, as always, as soon as the average air temperature stays below 8 degrees for more than 3 days. And, as in previous years, the decision about the heating period is made by local self-government bodies. In the capital and several other regional centers, heating is already being turned on in schools, kindergartens, and social institutions. You're watching TSN. To stay informed about the main news, subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications. And now I will continue with the news broadcast. New rules for entering the European Union have come into effect. From now on, when crossing the border, passports will no longer be stamped. Instead, faces and fingerprints will be scanned. However, these innovations are being introduced gradually. Which border checkpoints have already implemented these changes, and what does it look like in practice? Our TSN correspondent, Marichka Kuzik, will tell us more.
I am currently at the Shehini checkpoint, and this is so far the only one out of 7 checkpoints on the Ukrainian-Polish border where the new digital control system for entering the EU is already operational. There are no lines right before the checkpoint, but after passing Ukrainian control, the traffic slows down. Travelers say that because of face and fingerprint scanning, crossing takes more time, and this is the case at both the vehicle and pedestrian crossings.
They take a photo of your finger and a photo of your face with some device that looks like a phone. It doesn't work without a hitch.
Sometimes they use a phone to take photos, and sometimes there's mostly a frame. Everyone gets out and goes to the window, and there they take a photo and fingerprints. It slows things down a bit, yes. If there's a line, it does slow things down.
Essentially, the main innovations involve the digitalization of travelers' data. This concerns those who are not citizens of the European Union and are crossing the border with a biometric passport. At the same time, the procedure does not apply to visa holders, those who have temporary protection status in one of the EU countries, or holders of so-called LBC cards, that is, local border traffic cards. These are for people who live within a 30-kilometer zone from the border.
We have LBC cards, so we pass through quickly. They called us for the LBC, so they scan it, and for the passport, they scan it too. People stand for a long time, they wait for hours.
Here in Shahini, the digital system was operating in test mode for about a month, and as of yesterday, it has been officially implemented. It has also been introduced at the Mostiska Przemysl railway checkpoint. By the way, the train from Polish Przemysl to Kyiv arrived today with a delay of an hour and a half. Here's what the passengers have to say.
They used to take photos before, but now they also take fingerprints in addition. Well, but it's just like 10 seconds and that's it. The lines aren't because of this. There just aren't enough border guards.
It was very quick, literally a second.
The biometric system will be implemented gradually over the course of 6 months. So for now, there are no changes at other checkpoints in Volyn or Bukovina. Here's what the passengers of the Chelm-Dnipro train, which passes through the Dorohozhsk-Yahodin checkpoint in Volyn, have to say.
They didn't check us, of course, it was the usual procedure. They just stamped our passports.
It's not clear how they're going to do this on the train either, so
That's all.
Yes, this will take a long time. It's a lengthy process, and I think the lines at the borders will be much longer. When the system is fully operational, facial scans, fingerprinting and passport checks will be carried out when crossing the external border of all 29 European countries. The goal of these innovations is to minimize the risks of document forgery, illegal border crossings, or even espionage. Marichka Kuzik, Tetiana Komich, Ihor Bondarenko, Andriy Popovich, TSN 1+1.
How did Germany help Russia prepare for the war? The publication Spiegel has shared sensational excerpts from a new investigative book by local journalists. The authors, Katja Gloger and Georg Maskolo, write that even before the annexation of Crimea and during Angela Merkel's tenure, German military personnel trained Russians to fight more effectively. In particular, they helped build new military training grounds modeled after Western standards. And the defense conglomerate Rheinmetall was allegedly planning contracts with Moscow worth €1 billion. Rheinmetall claims that they acted on government orders. The impetus for military cooperation between Berlin and the Kremlin was Russia's unsuccessful campaign against Georgia in 2008. Despite the fact that Moscow captured about 20% of the neighboring country's territory in just a few days, the army performed poorly. Disorganization, outdated weaponry, and basic mistakes. It was at that time, journalists write, that Putin decided to bring the army up to Western standards, and for this, he chose Germany as a partner. Merkel's government agreed. They even planned an officer exchange and joint exercises for October 2014, which caused outrage among NATO countries. Everything was interrupted after the annexation of Crimea. Journalists from Spiegel note that these revelations cast doubt on Merkel's public statements that it was Eastern Europe that refused to engage in dialogue with Putin. A man suspected of preparing a terrorist attack was detained by the security service in Zaporizhia. Investigators say he planned to detonate a homemade explosive device in downtown Zaporizhia. After being mobilized, the man deserted his unit and agreed to cooperate with Russian special services. At first, he provided them with the coordinates of checkpoints and Ukrainian armed forces units, and later received the task to carry out a terrorist attack. During searches, components for explosives and a surveillance camera were found in his possession. The detainee faces a life sentence. The Nobel Prize laureates in economic sciences were announced in Stockholm. The winners are economists Joel Mokyr, Philippe Aghion, and Peter Howitt. They received the award for explaining economic growth driven by innovation. Half of the prize will go to Mokyr for identifying the prerequisites for sustainable growth through technological progress, while the other half will be shared by Aghion and Howitt for their theory of sustainable growth through creative destruction. The laureates of the Economics Prize are traditionally announced last. And that means that now all this year's Nobel laureates are officially known. With rain and cool weather, but so far without frost and in some places even with sunshine. This week the weather in Ukraine will be unpredictable. In the north and center of the country there will be a sharp drop in temperature, cloudy skies and almost no clearings. In the south, temperatures will reach up to 16 degrees and it will be sunny. However, light rain will fall everywhere and it will gradually get colder. Towards the end of the week, the average daytime temperature is expected to drop by 2 to 4 degrees. The feeling of cold will be intensified by gusty winds and high humidity. So let's dress warmer and wait for the Indian summer.
Going forward, we don't see any real warming up to plus 20 degrees, no. In the south, it might reach plus 15. A cool air mass from the northwest will start spreading over us. At night, we expect temperatures between 1 and 7 degrees above zero. We expect frost specifically in the southern, central, eastern, and Sumy regions. During the day, it will be 5 to 12 degrees above zero, and in the south and southeast of the country, up to plus 15.
2-1. The Ukrainian national team secured a victory over Azerbaijan in the World Cup football qualifiers. The Ukrainians opened the score in the first half with a free kick. In the second half, they scored again. After 4 rounds, the Ukrainian national team has 7 points and is in second place in its group. There are still 2 more qualifying matches ahead. At this moment, that was the latest update. Don't miss our next TSN broadcast to stay up to date with the news.